Candace Spears, welcome to Life Hacks with Mac. I'm very excited to run through an interview and understand how an entrepreneurial woman has managed to do so much in such a little time, and how you manage to juggle it all and make it all happen and make sense of what is priority and what is not. I'm very excited with the fact that you're based in Jackson, in Wisconsin. Is that right?
Wisconsin. Mm-hmm.
Excellent stuff.
You got it.
So we have a nice time difference on this side of the world, out in London. And what I want to find out from you, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you run a digital marketing agency, you're in property, and the list goes on, and you're on different boards of different organizations. You have your own podcast. And I'm trying to think. There was the list just keeps going up, and you're doing all of this all at the same time. You're currently doing all those things now.
Yeah. Yes, I am. It's funny because when you say it all, I'm sitting here and I'm listening like, girl, are you crazy? Like, what is going on? But yeah, I do currently do all those things.
So I've got to make this clear. It's not your resume. This is what you are currently doing. Yes. I am known, Mac, to just sort of like have my hands in things. Like, I get energy out of just bringing things to life and newness. And so I also get bored easily. So I have to kind of contain that boredom, right? Because there's only so much time that you have. And when you're trying to build businesses, focus does play some importance. And so it's just a matter of balancing that need to have variety, and to see things come to life and watch them grow. So for the viewers' benefit, what I'd like to do is get you to explain to us how this all came about, because you were in corporate before. And I'm sure there are lots of people watching this, and they're all, we're at this time of the world where the world's gone through lockdown and all kinds of crazy things happening. So a lot of people are probably, well, I know they are, sitting there and questioning what they've done, where they currently are, what the future holds. And many would be questioning, do I stick with a corporate? Some won't have a choice because maybe there won't be a job to return back to. But there will be a lot of people that have all of a sudden appreciated the last 8 to 10 to 12 weeks that we've had of this madness to review things and go, maybe it's time to do things differently. So take us through your journey of, going from corporate to what was the light bulb moment, and then how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So, it's funny. So I spent a lot of time in corporate, yes, and followed that natural path of graduate, get a good job, do all that great stuff. I've always, though, been an entrepreneur at heart. Always in like, okay, how do we just go and raise this new thing, or look at this, or just like startup junkie extraordinaire, like always, even in my time at corporate. And there was a point in time about 6 or 7 years ago or so where I did have a mindset of like, no, it's time for me to just work for me. Like, I'm just going to do it and work for me. And that was when I started my catering business. Now, I realized a couple years in, food service industry wasn't really for me.
That's what I had to
and so I just kind of said, okay, all right, maybe not. Got back on that just path. I never left my corporate job while I was doing that, but just said, nah, I'm just going to continue down the path. Just climb.
So you're doing corporate and doing your own business as a side hustle as such?
Yes. Yep. About 7 or so years ago. This catering business. And it was kind of like, okay, well, just back on the corporate bandwagon, and, you know, I was there and had a couple company changes that had happened. And I remember I got recruited back to a big company, and this time it was in marketing. I'd been in IT for most of my career, and I was feeling myself, Mac. When I say that, I mean, like, okay, here I am working at this super well-known company. It was G. It was the second time I had come back to G. And super well-known company, you know, got this amazing title, you know, in marketing, all this other stuff. Life is great. Like, I am it. Well, about, I don't know, 6 months in, 8 months in, I'm never great with timing. It was a short amount of time. One, I wasn't really loving what I was doing there. So I'm like, okay, maybe I made the wrong decision, but still, good job, good title, great pay, fantastic. I was told one day after a performance review that my role was going to be going away. Had nothing to do with my performance. I hadn't been there for a long time. The person who had recruited me in was gone to another part of the division, like 2 months after I joined. We got a new chief marketing officer. So much changed. And I just remember I had never been in that position of feeling rejected or feeling less than, but I was. And I just remember, like, in the parking lot one night of the office, like after I got off, I sat there and I literally cried, man. Like, no lie, I cried. And, you know, it was in that moment that I also said to myself, like, this will never happen to me again. Like, I will never have, like, so much of me and, like, what I felt just taken away from me. I need to control, I need to own me, I need to own Candace. And so you fast forward, I had gotten into another job, another corporate position. And I took this attitude in there, though, that was very much like, I own me, I own Candace. What I bring to a company is what I bring. It is mine. It is mine to keep. And so as I started down that path at that new company, I remember, Mac, so I'm known to do just sort of creative ways to get requirements out of people or get people to collaborate and that type of thing. So I started, you know, working my methods and magic. And what I noticed is people would come to me and they would say, like, oh, can you help me understand again how you did that one thing and got them to talk? Like, I'd like to use that in my team meeting or this or that. And so because I had this mindset of, like, okay, whatever I bring is mine. How do I make sure I own it and I bring it to the world? I wrote a book. And so it was a book.
So this is while you were still at
yes.
the corporate? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. Let me tell you how much my mindset had changed. So I wrote this book, Bring Your Crayons to the Office. And it was based on scenarios that were happening in the office where people were, you know, asking my advice on how to do this and how to do this and how you do that so well. So I was like, okay, if people are asking for it, it's important. I'm going to write it down. And so I published that book. And when I published that book, you better believe I made sure everybody knew about it right there at the job. There were VPs that knew about it and they then had it on their shelves. My mentality was different. It was like, no, I am bringing myself to this company. You're not just picking me and saying, I want you to do that. I bring something. In the same way I bring it to you, I can bring it to anybody else. And so that was kind of my mindset. But I fell into some success traps along the way. So now we're getting to where I finally made my leap. So
I was going to ask, what's the shift?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. So I fell into some success traps where, you know, things were good. I really had that strong mindset. I started doing some heavy blogging back then and, you know, building up my brand. But along the way, I kind of got sucked back into what the company needs and making that successful. So I've got a background in Agile and Lean Startup and Scrum methodology and all other stuff. And the company was making a move towards that. So when they understood I knew how to do this, right, I went on this massive adventure that went well beyond the Call of Duty of training like about 400 people in both an agile mindset, and then for our developer bunch in Scrum and all this other stuff, and pitches to the CEO, all this other stuff. Now the CIO at the time was the one, because I was back in IT, he was the one that gave me the cover, the sponsorship that said, Candace, go ahead, spread your wings. Like, this is great. You want to put this in front of the CEO? I got you. Let's do it. Like, I'm all on board. Now, when he made his announcement that he was retiring, that's when I felt the exact same way that I felt when I was in that car that night crying. I felt like I let this happen to me again. Do you know what I mean?
Unfortunately.
Like being at the mercy of someone, something.
Like you need permission.
And so that, yes. And so that was the thing that made me say, okay, we're not doing this again. We're not. You're too talented for that. Yes. Like it was so clear to me. It was almost like with every incident, it became more and more clear the talent that I possessed and what I really needed, right? What I was able to accomplish wasn't a factor of somebody giving me something. It was something I had in me all along. I just chose to feel like I wasn't able to move forward with it. You know what I mean? And so that's what set in motion a year of saying, okay, my next move is to work for me full time. And here I am.
And this is where I know the subject of what we are going to discuss is around the whole owning yourself and, or owning your time, your talent, and your identity, which those two little shifts is, and when I hear you say it, I think of the corporate and how many times I think many people go through the thought process because they have that little dent to the ego, but it's not enough to get them to take action and own their identity. Because, and don't get me wrong, I don't think there's anything wrong with working for big corporates. I think there's a role for everybody, and I think that it offers great opportunity. But when it comes to, I think corporates do so much better when they have individuals who can express their identity.
Yep.
And I felt that little bit of pain when you said, the second time, and that's where some people lose who they are, and they go on this journey where they just fill the next role and they lose purpose. And I must be honest, I've been through that where I've taken a role because title's nice, money's nice, all the rest of it. But that sense of purpose and identity wasn't congruent with the role. And I almost felt I don't know if the word pain is right, but
it's probably right, yeah.
But I think life sends you things on occasion where it's like signposts where you have a choice right there in that split second to make some valuable decisions. How did you go about owning that so that you could do what so many other people only think about?
I'm gonna be honest with you. It was a straight line. It was a straight line. After I made my decision, it was a straight line path, but there were a few curves happening. Let me tell you what I mean. I swear to you, Mac, like when I got fixed, and I think there's a certain amount of just sort of confidence and things you let go of and things that just kind of shake off when you're like, I don't really need you for my next step. Like my, my next step is something else. I'm here to do well and do this, but I know where I'm going. And so I had that. And I've always been a fairly confident person, I guess, I think. But what's funny is into this journey, I had people that started to reach out to me, my new CIO, our COO, all saying, oh, we think you're super talented. Like I want to see, like, what is it, where is it that you'd like to go? There's a couple people, your name keeps coming up for different things. Like what is it that you want to get into? This is what I mean by the curves and like the success traps, the things that kind of,
to hold you, to keep pulling back in.
Yes, that sounds interesting. So I had some moments of like, okay, well, maybe I should explore it. No, maybe I should. No. So some of that happened. And I remember as we got, well, first thing, I avoided conversations. There's some conversations I avoided, like those. Like I ended up having lunch with the COO, and the COO even said to me, hey, I want you to sit down with VP of marketing, right? I think, it'd be great to see you there, like that type of thing. I never had that conversation. And about, maybe it was 8 months later, I talked to him, sat down and talked to him when I was leaving. Of course, he found out I was leaving. And I was quite honest with him with why I never had that conversation, because I literally had to keep my focus. So when you talk about like how you manage to just go, I was determined, but I also recognized the things that could take me off track. I recognized that. I recognized that when I was in still a vulnerable state of like, if someone were to say, hey, you want to go take this nice fancy role and lead this? That I may have been like, oh, sure. You know what I mean? Let me give that a try, or that type of thing. So I recognized like where my vulnerabilities were, and I literally avoided certain things. I needed to. But it
make conscious decisions to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some conversations became very uncomfortable for me, right? Conversations about, well, what's next and what do you want to do next? I would try to find ways to avoid those conversations and to get out of them. One, because I didn't want to talk about what's next. And two, if whatever came out of their mouth might have seemed slightly attractive, but I knew I wanted to go this other path, I didn't want to jeopardize it. I wanted to keep solid. Towards the end, so about 3 months or so left before my, in my mind, my resignation date, I remember praying, Mac, because what was going on is they were opening up a director role. I was a manager, had a team of about 12 direct reports in the data space, and they were opening up a director role in the data space. And I had said to myself, well, if they offer me this, I'm going to decline it. If they offer me this, I'm going to decline it. But I had prayed to God. I was like, please help me stay on my path. Like, I need you to help me stay on my path. Like, I'm getting close. I want to get there. And so it's funny. So when they announced this director role, the person they announced was a very unlikely choice. And it wasn't me. And I said, while partially kind of like salty about it, right? Not really upset because I would have declined it, but salty about it. At the same time, I reflected back on my prayer, and I took it as like that confirmation, like you're stepping in the right direction. Like, why would I put it in your way to go backwards? Like, at all. And so that's where I mean, like, not necessarily a straight line. Once you get yourself set down a path, there will be temptation, there will be opportunity to explore. It's just a matter of how focused you are on getting to that life that you really want.
So, in saying that, because by the sounds of it, you had a very clear vision of where you wanted to be and what you wanted to do. how, especially when there are all these curves in the corporate world, and the temptation for the corporate progress, or the other shiny job, or offers elsewhere, or potentially just trying to hold on to a job, because I think over the next 12 months that's going to be an interesting situation where a lot of people are literally just going to want to hold on in fear of the fact that there's so many people who are going to lose positions. Now, that may create opportunities, I believe, where one door closes, another one opens.
Absolutely.
But how do you determine what that impact is that that you want to make on the world? How do you know that that's the right thing, so that you can make the decision fairly easy? I would assume if you're that clear.
Yeah. And one of the things I'll say for sure is I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted my life to look like.
Okay.
That I knew for sure. And I knew that there were a lot of things that I could do. That I knew. I took and this is the same thing for anybody. When you talk about what is that path going to be, and what am I going to take, or how am I going to figure out that it's the right thing? I like to say follow where your energy goes. Like, take some time and think about how you are spending your non-work time. What are you doing? And what are the things that you are doing, assuming that you're doing something that is enjoyable to you. That would be a qualifier. So for the enjoyable things that you are doing, what are they? What do you like about it? The one that I love is, what's something that you'll argue about all day? Or what's something that you'll step up and say something about? For me, I know that I am passionate about taking action in general. And so whenever I end up in a conversation, and I'm an introvert, but whenever I really am. I know people don't believe me, but I am. I do not get my energy from people. But whenever I'm in a conversation, like even in a bigger room, I will tend to take a quieter role and listen and process and that type of thing. But if there's a piece in the conversation that deals with anything that sounds like an excuse, or anything that sounds like a barrier, like to action, another me will show up. And I recognize that. And so for me, like, recognizing things like helping push people to action and this type of thing, I'm like, okay, I got a little bit of that. And then I think about the things that I enjoy. So marketing, my background's marketing and IT, but just marketing in general. Like I told you, I like bringing things just to life and finding ways to get it in front of people. I'm like, okay, I like that. Kind of a tech nerd, so I've got a technology background. And, things will start to mesh together once you open your eyes to very purposefully say, okay, I know that I'm going to take some action that says, this is how I want my life to look. This is what I project for me in the future. I'm going to intentionally figure out how I'm going to get there. So let me start taking a step back to see. Do you know what I mean?
So I was actually doing a session with some of my coaches this week, and they talk about the analogy of being, doing, and having, and working out first who you want to be, which I'm looking and hearing what you're saying. And for me, I put that in that context of really working on who you want to be before you know what you need to do, and that will give you pretty much everything you want to have as a byproduct. But if you focused on that job and you were focused on the what I have to do to go to work, or the job role and everything else, then you lose touch with who you are and need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Does that, that's kind of where I'm seeing you go with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that jives. Absolutely. Like, because I understand, here's the thing that gets me going, right? The podcast. And my podcast, Ambition, Honey, and Hustle. So that whole, like, the 300 episodes that are there, they represent my journey, like, through the path, and me starting to exercise my voice, and me starting to come into that, like, okay, I'm talking about action, I'm talking about this. And I even started to recognize some of those connections with the things that I was talking about just by taking action and exercising my voice and that type of thing. And then along the way, the agency came, right? Along the way, it became like, okay, so marketing, technology, helping people do this, plus I have this voice over here. Like, it all starts to come together. But first being settled on, like, I love helping people get through and build their businesses, or helping them get to places that they never imagined. That's the thing I love. That's the thing I'm rooted in. Now, if I want to branch that out and I want to see how many different ways I can make money with that, well, okay, that opens up a whole nother world, right? I can go this agency route. I can do sponsorships over here. I can start doing this over here. And while I get to those things, I'm grounded in that, hey, this is kind of fun. So, like, when you were listing off the stuff, even though it sounds crazy, like, it's, at the same time, it's like, I've got, like, some passionate connection into those things as well. Or at this point, I really wouldn't be doing them, right? Because they're still in their growing stages. They're absolutely still in growing stages. But to your point, like, knowing who you want to be, like what you imagine, because who wants to build a life they hate? If you have the opportunity to build and design the life you want to live, you take time and you think about what it's going to be. So if you know that that's possible for you, then sit down and architect it. You know what I mean?
So I know there'll be people watching this going, okay, yes, no, I get what you're saying, but how do I sit down and architect that? What does that look like? Does that mean I go and go and sit in a quiet little spot in the jungle and hide from the rest of the world, or do I go to one of these resorts where I have to not speak to anybody for 6 months and just introspective? And there's so many different ways. Or do I go and find a coach? Do I go on a course? Like, how do I?
Yeah. So my first thought will be this. One, I think you do need quiet time for yourself. Don't need to go to a jungle. That sounds dangerous. You don't even have to go to a resort. But think about if you even find the quiet hours. If you're a morning person, get up at 4 for the next 7 days, 14 days. Get an hour to yourself, hour and a half. And really sit down with a paper and a pad and start to ask yourself the questions of, better yet, take it back. You take these 14 days, right? Sit down with your paper and your pad. Think about the day before, every day. What did you enjoy in that day? What brought you the most joy in that day? Start to look at those things, right? Use this data. I'm a big data person. So look at what you're finding out. Where are you seeing those pockets of joy? Where are you seeing those moments of excitement? One, that's got a telling piece to it. Now, the other thing that I like to do is say, if you are grounded in impact and like how you impact others and how you impact the world, I can just about guarantee you will have fulfillment. And so you've got this thing that you know is bringing you joy and energy. You got that. Hold on to it. Now think about how you want to impact the world. Like, who is it? Like, if you could serve anybody and help them get to some transformation, who would it be? What problem do they have? What would they look like as their transformed selves, right? So you can take that impact, think about your passion, right? What's bringing you joy? Then I want you to take a third piece, okay? I'm running out of hands.
I was just sitting there thinking.
I know. How am I going to get the third piece? Okay. So now take this third piece that looks at the skills that you have today, the value that you bring today. Start to triangulate. I have fun with this. I love this. I want to impact these people. So I can probably impact these people and get some of this fun here. And I can do it using these skills here that I already have. I think that's what it is. Like, take that quiet time and think about those things.
So I know I've gone through this process a few times, and it's sometimes when you start looking at exactly what you just said now, the things that excite you and really, you know, get you passionate about things, and you can wake up in the morning and you're excited to go and do those things. There can be the situation of, and I know a lot of people face this, of some people classify it as limiting beliefs, because they'll look at their current situation. And I just, you know, to give you an example, I had somebody that I was working with recently who their self-worth was wrapped up in their last position or career or title. Now, prior to that title, if you looked at their CV or resume as such, they have an incredible part, like what they've achieved and what they've done is mad. But they were looking at the last thing that almost defined them. And I know so many people go through this, and I know how passionate you are about working with women specifically. And yeah, I think of women that, you know, you're a mom, and you run all these businesses. I forgot to be the most important job. I didn't even list it. And you're a mom. That's so much more than all the other things. That's a lifetime commitment to a career there. And some people will go, or some, whether it be, you know, women specifically, will take some time out to go and spend investing their time into their children and, you know, their education, and getting them to a stage where they then will return to work. But they'll have that, okay, so I haven't done anything for the last 6 months, or the last year, or the last 2 years. How do you do all those things and make sure that you uncover the full value, not just, okay, well, this is all I've done? Because parenting in itself, that skill sets that you can use anyway. So
absolutely. I think it's it comes down to freeing ourselves from the idea of, especially when you've been in corporate, that is so laden with titles and, you know, titles and levels as if they equate to, you know, brilliance and capability, when they do not. So I think if we can free ourselves from that and know that any experience, to your point, any experience that we have in our life adds to our credibility. So as soon as you said that, so I've got a course that's called Repackage You Academy. And it speaks to this very thing of, you are most likely credible for just about any opportunity, assuming, you know, you've never been an astronaut before and all of a sudden you want to get into that, you know, or all of a sudden you want to go and be a doctor, you know what I mean? That you probably have what you need already in your life experience. You just have to frame it the right way, and not necessarily qualify that because it didn't happen inside of a corporation, you know, on somebody's payroll, that it doesn't count. Capability and experience is capability and experience, no matter how you get it. And the thing is, sometimes, quite often, that experience that you've had outside of a 9 to 5, whether in the home, however, volunteer, whatever, is often much more rich in experience, right? Because it was wild and it was free and it was something that you had to manage and make happen, not have to be told that this is a part of something and, you know, some path along the way. So it's us freeing our own selves from the idea of what's valid and what's invalid. That's it.
So if you were sitting with somebody today and they were trying to work out what their value is, what their skill set, what kind of questions would you ask somebody? What exercise would you take them through to maybe formulate on paper so they can look at it and go, oh, wow, actually, look at all these things that I'm capable of. How, you know?
Yep. So the first thing I would do is to say, think about what you do in your everyday job. In your everyday life, start to write it down. What do? I do this, I do that, I do that. And quite often, right, we'll put down things that are just tasks. I don't know, I manage XYZ project or something like that. But go ahead and take it a level deeper. Like, so what if that project didn't get managed? Like, what value are you really bringing? Like, what happens at the end of it? So take a second to like write it all down. The other thing to think about is, what do people commonly ask you for? Like, when do they commonly come knock on your door? Now, it may not be something that you want to do. Like, that's fair enough. But there's some insight in that, is what I'm trying to say. So people are always knocking on your door, like, you know, hey, Mac, I am about to have a big meeting with so-and-so, and I'm super nervous. Like, can you help me run through the slides? I'm just not sure. Like, I'm just super nervous. You probably bring some value of like clarity and helping people get clear on what they do. You know, it could be anything, but look for the things where people come to you repeatedly, and then just think about what you do and go a level deeper. You will see the stuff that you're bringing, right? And it doesn't just have to be in the job. That was job related stuff, but you can think about it at home too. What is it that you're doing? You're guaranteed everybody brings some value in this world. Generally, everybody brings some value in this world. You just got to tap into what it is and then figure out how to use it going forward.
So, you know, you've kind of taken us through that journey. You've unpacked figuring out how to work out what your kind of value is that you bring, determining, you know, we've looked at the perfect world that we would like to live in. You've looked at, you know, the daily things that excite you and all of those things. But how do you then, you know, coming back to that impact part of determining the actual impact of what it is you want to do as that next step? Because you know, you've mentioned a few times where you wrote a book while you were already in a position. So, but you know, I'm hearing that you don't have to quit to go and get started.
No, in fact, I recommend that you don't. Don't. Here's the thing. Once you can open your eyes to that value that you bring, right? You've got some idea of where you're finding your passion, your energy. If it's an entrepreneurship type move and you're currently in your 9 to 5, then for you've got to make that mental shift that your presence in your 9 to 5 is simply you engaging in a contract with your employer to provide your services. And they are the same services that you may choose to provide elsewhere for your own business, for somebody else, what have you. You do have to make a mental shift, right? In doing that. Now, go ahead, Mac.
Just that little thing that you said there for me changed that. And this is beautiful because I've never really thought about it this way, but you've defined identity in the fact that you are providing a service. So, and that contract that you're fulfilling. And unfortunately, I think, and I know when I was in corporate, it almost felt like you were owned by the corporate. You know what I'm saying? So like,
yes, I know what you're saying.
Like when you go home and you think about something that's not related to your job, you almost feel guilty because it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm actually interested in something totally different. And this really excites me. And I know when I was, the personal development space, I'm a massive pro personal development and coaching and learning and always growing. And I felt guilty going to like talks in the evening and, going and doing courses. And because I felt like if they found out I was doing this in the evening, that was taking away from the corporate. But the way you just put that, that, this is just a service you're providing. And straight away, then all of a sudden you open up the whole world to, hey, well, who else can I provide a service to? And is this the service I want to be providing?
Yep.
And then looking at what is this identity and does everything that I'm doing fit in with, I'm liking.
Bingo. Like bingo. It's that flip of the switch that starts to put you back in control of who you are, who that identity is, how you really own that identity. Because if I know I have options and, I would say this quite frankly, so, the team that I manage, because I'm big on helping people develop, right? Here's another thing, because I'm big on helping people develop and I brought that into my role, right? And so for my team, whenever I would talk to them back in corporate, we would do reviews and we're constantly doing feedback, and they would come in the door and some of them would tell me, hey, I'm thinking about applying for this role. Because I wanted it to be an environment in such a way that they felt like they had options.
Absolutely.
Because you do, right? You do.
And
that just, right. Super empowering. And it gives you that open permission to say, okay, what do I really want? Or to expect more when you should. Do you know what I mean? So that would be the first thing. Like you got to make a mental turn. That's the first thing. I'm trying to think to the next thing you're talking about. Oh, so from an impact perspective, when you talk about, okay, what should I do next? What should be that step? If you can get clear on that impact that you want to make to the world, because when you're talking about that impact, right, who do I really want to touch? What problem are they having? How can I help them transform? There you will also start to find those business opportunities, okay? And you know what they say, the harder the problem you solve, the more money tends to flow in. But here you are, you're marrying that business opportunity with truly something that you want to impact in such a way. And so I think about, take for instance, if you want to help battered women, right? That you want to help battered women, or battered women with children, and you want to see that they have all the resources that they need to survive, so that on the other side of it, they're living, they're thriving, they are independent and secure, and all this other stuff, right? Well, there's different ways that you can bring that impact and see that outcome. One, hey, you could go and start working at a battered women's shelter. You could go and volunteer at a battered women's shelter. You could open your own nonprofit and run it. Do you know what I'm saying? So like when you can get grounded in that impact, you will also start to see the business opportunity because you'll be in problem solving mode. as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's how I do it.
Seeing all the little sparks. It's exciting. So I want to bring this back to, I mean, it all sounds great because now all of a sudden you're in a, you know, whether you're working for somebody or you're looking at new opportunities, and you've worked out your identity and you kind of know that you can do something outside of that 9 to 5. Some people are happy in their 9 to 5 and they still have some form of energy left when they come back from work in the evening. Other people come back from work in the evening and they just want to die on the sofa and watch 10 box sets and just like, I don't know, you know, escape.
Absolutely.
How do you, I almost want to say find the time, but how do you prioritize? How do you put that together? How do you create the opportunity to make that time, to make that impact?
Yeah, I think the key word in what you just said is create. Create the time. I literally think you have to create the time. It isn't a matter of, oh, I'll get some time when I can. So I remember when I was when I was first starting down the path. And again, this is why it's so interesting to listen back to the podcast and see different episodes. I would get up at like 4:45 in the morning. Get up at 4:45, start working on stuff. And I went through a myriad of things before I kind of settled on what I was doing. So was blogging heavily for a little bit and kind of switched topics a little bit, switched directions a little bit, but 4:45 in the morning, up before everybody else is up, because I need to create time to get this done. Because I know I got to go and work my full-time job. I know I'm on a mission, got to be there for my kids, and thank God for my husband, right? And not everybody has a partner that is, you know, as supportive, but there were many times, you know, we were talking earlier about how I know what it's like to be on the side of the working parent, right? Because my husband was a stay-at-home dad for a while. And I know what it's like now, even though I'm a full-time entrepreneur, with the girls home, right, indefinitely, and my husband now out in his brick and mortar store. It's like the role switch. I know both sides and what it feels like, but time will not magically show up. Like it won't. And there's some sacrifice in that. And for me, since I was a morning person, 4:45 it is. People thought I was crazy. Yeah, okay, I get it, but when else am I going to do it? Like when I have to create the time. And I think that's just what it is. Time is something you can create, but you got to choose to do that.
And I think when the vision is clear of what you want to be, would you say, and I know what the answer is for me, but you know, the question is to you, is it a lot easier decision when you know what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve?
I think so. I think so. I think when you know what you're chasing, I mean, again, for me, I didn't know exactly how it was going to look, but what I did know is I wanted freedom. I envisioned a life where I can go and visit my kids' school in the afternoon time and surprise visit them, which I couldn't really do now because I was always stuck in somebody's meeting, a must-do meeting, must-do strategy that had to happen, right?
The meeting for the sake of the meeting. Yeah.
Yes. I envisioned a life where, you know, I could go and spend a couple weeks, spend a month, not ask permission for anybody in another country or in another state. So those are the things I knew. I knew the life that I was after, and I knew I was not going to get that life the way I was. Not having the how fully thought through, but I had a vision, and that did make it easier.
Wow. So I'm sure there will be a lot of people watching this and thinking, hopefully they've crossed a few moments where they've had that aha light bulb moment, because I've seen a few things that I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I love the way that that's come across. And there'll be people wondering, okay, what next? How do I do this? Hopefully they've got a few takeaways there, on how to go and determine what the impact is that they want to make. Uncovering that true value and identity, which you did so beautifully. And I'm going to be stealing a few of those things, if that's okay.
Hey, take it.
Just, I've got so many exciting little takeaways there. And then, the creating time, the stepping up and deciding whether it's important enough for you to take those actions or whether you want to accept status quo. And I think that's really what it comes down to is, I listened to those two moments you spoke about, the one in the car park and then the one later on, where it's clear that you made a defining decision that wouldn't happen again.
Absolutely.
And that's the decision that people really have to make is, whatever it is that thing that puts them in that uncomfortable position, the uncomfortable zone, that they feel like they're selling themselves out, or, whatever they want to call it, is that they are willing to make that decision to do what other people are not prepared to do, to I guess, have what other people don't have.
Right. Right.
So I really love that. Thank you so much for spending the time.
Thanks for having me.
I know people will want to reach out and connect and find out more, and perhaps even find out, how they can work with you, or get some more guidance potentially. How do people connect with you? What is the best way to try and get hold of you? Because I could imagine you have about 12 different email addresses, 15 companies. What's the simplest way to get hold of you?
It's a whole nother mess. So I love to hang out on Instagram. You can find me on just about any social channel, but on Instagram is a favorite channel. And you can find me at Candace Spears, so first name, last name. And you can find me on just about every social channel like that, if not at Candace Spears, C-A-N-D Spears. But Instagram is a favorite. So you can find me over there for sure. And if there's any folks, especially women, because you alluded to it earlier, I have a major heart for the working mom. It's my story. And I know what that is, and really helping them own their time, their talent, their identity, and start and grow businesses. So if there are any working moms that are listening, and would love to join in the Owners Club, that's a membership program that I have that helps working moms along that path. You can join into that at ownersnow.com. $1, try it out for 7 days, and if you like it, stick around. But yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone. I love this topic. I love this conversation, and I love seeing people win at owning their life. So.
Well, I think we're on the same page there. For me, it's all about adding value and seeing people have that aha moment and step up. And you've done it so beautifully. And I thank you for your time. I know you've had one hectic day, and I'm sure you want to get back to go and spend some time with your girls and having some well-deserved time out. So much appreciated. If there's anything else that people want to know, they now know where to go. And I look forward to seeing you inspire a lot more people.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh. It's been a hectic day, but you have made it an awesome day, and just every conversation I've had with you so far. So thank you so much for all you do.
Only a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.